Hello, everyone. This is Kristen Hemming, and welcome back to the Confidence Summit. And I have with me today Dave Burlin, and we're going to be talking about community. But before we start, I just want to tell you a little bit about him. Dave encourages leaders to maximize their full potential of influence by helping them communicate their vision and invest in their great resource, their people. He is a Marine Corps veteran, speaker, and holistic business development coach and consultant. Creating a culture built on trust and communication allows a team to work and communicate at the highest level so they can serve more people and in turn sell more stuff. With growth comes more opportunity for leaders to emerge, and the cycle of leadership and influence continues. Dave currently serves as a city leader for Bunker Labs in Las Vegas, Nevada. Bunker Labs is a nonprofit organization with a focus to help equip, inspire, and connect veterans with resources to start and grow businesses. And for the last 2 years, he's been working on the idea of why networking, building quality relationships before the business card or the title. And welcome, Dave. Thank you so much for coming.
Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Great to be here.
So, I get a lot of funny looks sometimes when I talk about community and that community builds confidence. But I found from personal experience that when I'm in a group that is supportive and is encouraging and optimistic, that my confidence has grown. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about this, because I think with you creating helping people to do networking and get connection through why networking, that it's kind of that community goes hand in hand with that.
Yeah, I think community is really important. I can speak from true experience. Just being here in Las Vegas, I moved here less than a year ago. Las Vegas is a phenomenal city. But it's a very much a hodgepodge of people from all over the place. So how do you find a community in a place that's such a big, diverse mix of all these different people? And that's part of the reason where the evolution of why networking came to life, is because I was searching for community. There's different ways that people kind of say who they are. It's all based on the events that we go to and things like that. And we're all trying to find that. But to me, I think community is vital because, to your point, confidence goes up. Like if you know that you feel safe around certain people and if you're excited, then you're willing to do a little bit more than you might otherwise. So to me, I think the message that I've been trying to share with people is go out, find community. I find it through events. I attend 3 to 5 events every week, but also I host events, right? And I'm always trying to find like-minded people to connect with on a deeper level.
So if you have somebody that's lacking confidence or maybe even anxiety, how do you help them, or what suggestions would you have for those people that don't necessarily feel comfortable in going into a group setting?
Yeah, the most powerful thing for me is growth, right? So it sounds like what you're explaining can be isolation, and isolation can come from not having confidence, right? I come from another very diverse network, the veteran community, right? So as a Marine Corps veteran, one of the things that I speak about is the fight against isolation, things like that. A lot of it comes from confidence, but ultimately isolation starts to happen because we feel like we don't fit in or we don't belong. Some people take those relationships online, but that can be dangerous too, right? The best thing that I recommend for people is reading and growth. There's literally a book for everything. So if there's probably even a book that's something close to get more confidence or something like that. So a lot of times, even just starting, reading, learning a little bit more about what it is that you're trying to accomplish, not only does that kind of break you out of the own voice in your head, but a lot of times it can connect you to other people. I mean, anytime I go work in a coffee shop or anything like that, I throw out 2 or 3 books that have changed my life, and I just put them on the desk behind me. and I'll be working away, and people will just walk by and be like, "Oh my gosh, I love that book." And now we have community, right? So that can be the start of a phenomenal friendship or relationship, but that just comes from the things that I care about, which is growth.
So when you're actually in a networking environment, what are some of the things you recommend that people do to make those kinds of connections?
Yeah, I can give better advice of what not to do, and maybe it's just the
Perfect.
things that frustrate me. Um, and that's to go up and just stab somebody with a business card and say, "What do you do? What do you do?" So many times what we do changes, right? I've changed business cards 4 times in the last 5 years. Um, with that, it doesn't really matter what I do. What matters is what connects us as people. So I always suggest asking a few questions, like the goal is this: how many questions can you ask before you say, "What can I do?" And that's the game, right? So, hey, what's your guilty pleasure Netflix TV show? Or what's your favorite movie about humanity? Or, hey, I'm thinking about picking up a new book. Do you read much, or do you listen to podcasts? What's a podcast or a book that I should listen to? Those are some of the what I like to call medium talk, right, versus small talk, and basically try and figure out what are the things that can connect us before what we do.
So let's talk a little bit about when you were in the Marine Corps, and I think that's important because I think that's a big community in the sense of you relying on each other and you're gathering that kind of sense of strength between each other. And can you tell me like what that experience was like a little bit, and so that we have a better idea of maybe what community can feel like in a group setting, so to speak.
Yeah, the my time in the Marine Corps, it's been a while back. I got out, gosh, I've been out for 16 years.
Mm.
And what's phenomenal about that, I can literally fast forward 16 years and tell you I got to hang out with one of the buddies that I served with just, 2 weeks ago. He was in town. That's another great thing about being in Las Vegas. But literally people that I haven't seen in 15 years, just there's a connection there. There's a bond. And to his point, he even brought it up. He's like, I don't get it. Like everywhere else I go, there's nothing like that camaraderie, right? So we've all been through things, especially in the Marine Corps, where we suffered together as a group. We made sacrifices together as a group. And because of the things that we were up against, all we had was trust for each other at the highest level. And I don't mean like at the highest level of a military organization. I mean literally at the highest level of survival from the perspective of humanity. So once you've put your trust into people on that level, there's nothing that can ever break that bond. I'm always going to be connected to those guys. We're always going to take care of each other. We're always going to reach out if something's going on. So the community that's based off of that is like nothing else I've ever seen. But it's also branded that way. It's branded as the few, the proud. There's all these internal jokes that happen between Navy veterans and Army veterans and Air Force and stuff like that. But, with that, there's just a major community that comes with it. It doesn't matter what kind of event I'm at. If I see somebody that's wearing a Marine Corps hat, like there's a conversation that we can have. We have something in common, and that's like nothing else I've ever seen everywhere I've ever been.
Hmm. And I think those attributes, though, with community, in some ways, you can find those in other places as well. Um, and I think as a female, I think you have that camaraderie in different ways, especially when there's a spiritual avenue. Um, so I think to have that trust and have those connections is part of what I think community can really be about. So when we were talking the other day, you had mentioned about confidence anchors, and I thought that it might be really good to explain what they are and maybe talk about that tool and perhaps what it would be like to work towards creating that confidence to go into a room and make those connections.
Yeah, there's one of the things that I see people make all the time when it comes to going out and building a network and things like that. And I've been susceptible to it myself, right? And it's one of the things that really sparked a lot of my interest in kind of taking my path in helping people build better relationships. And people make excuses, right? People make a lot of excuses. And you know, I've been a lot of things. One of the things that I did after I got out of the Marine Corps, I was basically a drill instructor for at-risk youth. So I was a little bit more of a coarse kind of person, you know what I mean? A little abrasive. And I've let go a lot of that. But then years later, I was also a coach. I was a sales and leadership coach. And the number one thing that people did is they would always make excuses. And normally I would try and, combat those. And to the point now, I'm just like, hey, that's a great excuse. Use that one. And then people are like, oh my gosh, like I did make an excuse, so it's kind of like a little bit of guilt chain type thing there. But a lot of times people have a really great excuse of why they don't want to go step outside of their comfort zone. The thing that I bring up for that is confidence anchors. So, and it's not really just my confidence anchors, it's their confidence anchors, right? So I always ask the fun question, what's the worst thing that can happen? And of course, we can always leave our house and get hit by a truck or whatever. But what's the best thing that can happen? In fact, I always challenge people, what is the best thing that has ever happened from them stepping outside of their comfort zone, and create a confidence anchor out of that, right? Sometimes it's they met, they went to an event they wouldn't have otherwise, and they met the love of their life. That's a perfect example. Does that outweigh the fact that you could be like attacked by a chihuahua or something on the way? For sure. But like, how do you take those? Well, that's a confidence anchor, right? What's another example of something that you've done that you can be really proud of? And sometimes that's the work, right? Is trying to help people discover that, because they'll come up with a million reasons of why they can't, ignoring the reasons why in the past that they ignored that fear, they went with it, and they won. So for me, I have a couple of really cool confidence anchors, and mine are mine. They're mine alone. But I always look at the day that I got my Eagle Glove and Anchor, right? The day that I became a Marine, I overcame a lot of the adversities that it took to become a United States Marine. Later in life, when I set the big, crazy, audacious goal to do a TED Talk in 2013, I set the goal to do it in 10 years. I gave myself plenty of time and life experience. And in 14 short months, I stepped on stage for the first time publicly, and I did a TEDx talk. Those are the confidence anchors that now give me the confidence that every time I have a challenging speech or a talk or things like that, I'm just like, this is a big deal, right? So for any speakers, anyone that hires me as a speaker, like I take pride in that honor, but it is a big deal. But part of my confidence comes from my confidence anchors and say, hey, I've done this, I've done these things, like this is nothing. Like I can definitely step outside that comfort zone. The challenge with that for people that may not have big confidence anchors like that, then I have to be able to illustrate some really powerful stories of somebody who did step outside of their comfort zone, how they didn't get, mauled by chihuahuas, and how they did, make one connection that changed the course or direction of their life.
So that's really interesting. And in hypnosis, one of the things that you can do to help people to regain a feeling of confidence or any emotion is to reflect back from childhood and feel that emotion and move forward. So you are, in essence, kind of switching it around and doing the future of what it could feel like in the idea of what you're doing and have that emotion. And I think that's really important, because subconsciously, when you feel something really powerful or feel good about something, it's more likely to come into fruition when you're feeling that way.
Absolutely.
The
Absolutely.
emotion becomes stronger and stronger. And, I think that's such an important tool. What do you think the benefits are within the community itself, aside from the confidence? What else do you gain from being within a community, do you think?
The most powerful thing that we have as human beings is our network. I truly believe that. And what's great about that, it's not just about what you can do for me today, right? It's about what we can do for each other as we both, or as we all grow as individuals, right? Um, you know, I'm trying to think of a really great example. I have to give a friend of mine a shameless plug and shout out. It's really been a neat way that this whole story has kind of come full circle in a weird way. But a friend of mine back in Oklahoma, Dr. David Burkus, right? He's a professor at ORU, and he's written a couple of great books. And one of my favorite books of his is called Friend of a Friend. And what he really unpacks in Friend of a Friend is he talks about dormant relationships. He tells a story, and I'm paraphrasing this a little bit, but there's two kids that go to high school together, right? They weren't really friends, probably never spent the night at each other's house, but they were in the same friend groups, right? 15 years later, give or take, they end up sitting at the same table, assigned seating at a wedding. Why? Because they were part of the same friend circle. The friend circle overlapped, brought them back together. When they got to talking, catching up, hey man, it's good to see you. What have you been working on? Well, one guy talks about how he's part of the boxing commission, right? Like not just part of the boxing commission, but he was like part of the boxing commission that got like Mike Tyson kicked out of boxing. So pretty far up there, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other guy was working on this thing where he was trying to get mixed martial arts licensed through the boxing commission. That's exactly how the UFC was born. That table, but it came from a dormant relationship. So the powerful thing about community is it's not just all of the skills and the network that we bring to the community that day. It's how we grow as individuals. What can we bring to each other down the road? Like, and for the right community, for the right relationships, that stuff sticks. I mean, there's people that I haven't talked to in 10 years, but could pick up the phone with them. And if I needed help or I needed a resource, they would be the first people to step up because of the time that we shared in a community years ago. So to me, that's one of the most powerful assets is our network of resources. But as we grow together, we bring more to the table over time.
Yeah, it's definitely all about connection and really being able to have somebody that you can lean back to get that kind of input and feedback. And I find also that, you know, community can be really supportive when you're going through some rough times as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. It's funny because people joke around or they make comments all the time that um, people only show the great things on social media, right? And there's truth to that. There's some people that are more vulnerable than others, but guess what? It happens in real life too, right? I know for a fact that there's people that can put on a really nice suit, or there's people that can put on a really nice dress, throw on some makeup, fix their hair in a different way, and walk in like they don't have a problem in the world, but underneath they're broke as hell. They were thrown up in the car because they were afraid to leave their house today, right? They're depressed, they're angry. There's all these different emotions, but we still show up and we try to show something different than that, right? It
Mm-hmm.
happens a lot. It really happens a lot in the dating community, right? There's a perception of what we put out there, and then when it comes down to really meeting somebody, you find out there's a little bit more to their story that they obviously left out.
Right.
The important thing is that to me, it's fear or confidence, right? And again, it's a loose adaptation from different books that you may have heard about. I think there's one called The Sales Dog, and it's like you feed the fear dog or the courage dog, whichever one you feed gets stronger.
Mm-hmm.
So there are people that do isolate and they buy into that isolation and they separate themselves. And that's why, honestly, it's funny not to pivot the conversation, but that's why the first step in what I teach people for why networking, step number one is show up. It's amazing what can happen just from breaking yourself outside of that and just showing up to an event. showing up to a community and being there ready to serve. So yeah, to me, there's a lot of people that do come from a really tough place, but I've put the suit on myself and, like, mascara, tears before I leave the room, clean myself up a little bit, and then I end up sitting down with somebody who is going through the exact same thing, and they teach me a lesson in one conversation that has literally been a framework for what I've been teaching for the last year.
Wow, amazing. Yeah, and I think that is so important to show up and go out there and get connected and be connected with others, and that people are so much healthier, I think, when you are going out and you're doing things and you have relationships with people rather than isolating. I think that actually happens with a lot of women um, that are in their 40s and don't have children or didn't choose to get married, and they self isolate. And I think there is such an important part of being connected with other people. And I was laughing the other day. I was talking to someone, and she was saying she was actually went to church, and she was assigned to this group that were about 10 years older than her, and she was really sick and she wasn't feeling very well, and she just was feeling like she was old. And these women were like, "Oh my God, you're so beautiful, you're so thin, you're so fabulous." And it kind of made her realize how important it is to be around people, because you have that inner critic that will be talking down to your confidence and saying, you suck, pretty much, when we really are built for that connection and are uplifted when someone can be there and say, "You're great. These are my issues. Let's share the story. Let's work together. Let's be together." And I think physically, mentally, emotionally, it is so important to have those kinds of connections.
Yeah, 100%.
So I realize you can't probably connect or have an idea of what it's like to be a single female.
No, actually, it's funny that you mentioned that, and in some ways I can, and here's why. Because I'm always fascinated with humans in general, and shameless plug, single guy, right? But one of the things that I've been fascinated by in talking about the subject of why networking, more so in this city than any other city, I've seen these pockets of I call them boss babe groups. And it's all of these network groups that are only women. Now, I've been involved with groups like that in the past, like whenever I was in Tulsa and stuff like that. And when people really know me, like, it's kind of like that. I get a pass, right? Because I'm not going in with any ill will or any of that stuff. I'm most of my friends are girls, and I spend a lot of time with ladies. I coach women, and then a lot of times that conversation does turn into coaching for dating and things like that. So I do have a very deep understanding of what it's like for single women, not to be a single woman, but I do have a lot of empathy for that, because there's a lot of struggles that we have on our side too. Mm-hmm. So with that, I can definitely see isolation. I'm not even afraid to say it. I went on a date last night, just a coffee tea date. But the thing that she said was, I stood out, and I can only imagine what happens when, for her, I get maybe 1 or 2 messages every month as response back on any dating apps, where most ladies get 300 a day.
Wow.
300 a day. And it's like, you have to sort through that. And it's like all of their intentions, like, they never scroll, they never read any of that stuff. So I do have a lot of empathy for what that means. And I know how that can turn into isolation, right? Most guys will talk a big game and be like, yeah, I got, 3, yeah, it'd be nice to have 5 or 6 girls, knocking on my door. But when it's 300, that's intimidating, right? Mm-hmm. I don't want to leave my house. I can only imagine what that would be like, for a woman. So I do have a lot of empathy there.
Thank you for that. Sorry for my assumption.
No, it's all good.
So we have about 5 minutes left. Is there anything else that you'd like to share or mention about community that we haven't touched on yet?
I think, again, with relationships, community is the most powerful thing that we can have. We literally have the capacity to start a community at any time. But what most people don't understand is that there's already so many communities that are out there. I run into this a lot in the nonprofit space. In fact, I was on a I was on a nonprofit podcast a while back, and I was hesitant to do it because it was talking about building a stronger nonprofit. I was like, "You're not promoting for people to start nonprofits, are you?" And he's like, "Why?" And I was like, "Because that's the worst idea ever. Like, there's already enough nonprofits. In that world, it needs to be more about collaboration versus competition. When everybody starts a new thing, it segregates everything else and it gets watered down. We have the ability to start new communities, depends on what the intention's based on, but we can also leverage communities that other people have created. The important thing is to know why that community exists, right?
Mhm.
I'm a facilitator for Simon Sinek in the Why Discovery course. So I help individuals discover their why, communicate that to their audience and to their team. The thing about why is you need to know is, why am I joining this group? Why am I looking to be a part of this community? And then if you can't figure that out based on, how they describe the community on the event page or any of that stuff, then it's probably not going to fit. You want to find something that really does resonate with who you are, what you're trying to learn, who you're trying to meet. And yeah, the first step, just show up. Just show
Mhm.
up and be ready to receive and be ready to give. And it's amazing the things that can happen from just one connection.
Absolutely. And Dave, how can people get in touch with you if they want to talk to you about coaching or the Y Network?
Yeah. So my website is under a little bit of construction right now, but the Facebook page is a pretty easy example, and I can send you that. I don't know if there'll be links for it and things like that,
Yes.
but
Yep.
it's basically facebook.com/Dave Means Business. But I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. All of those networks. There's not a whole lot of Dave Burlins out there. It's Burlin with a U. So I kind of got the name capitalized on all that stuff. And then essentially DaveMeansBusiness.com is going through a little bit of a restructure right now. But yeah, why networking is a focus. I've been working on that keynote for a couple of years now. I just launched my first event in Las Vegas, had a great turnout last week, and the goal is to take that conversation on the road. So I'll be spending a little bit of time in Houston this year coming up, Nashville, Tulsa, and a little bit of everything in between.
Awesome. And for me, which I'll be leaving in the link, is they're coming up in the following week after this is releasing your inner critic, and that is a free workshop about an hour and a half long, and that will follow by Confident Strong course on self-belief. So thank you so much again for taking the time to speak with me about community. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks so much.
Thank you.